Well, it's the same as it was last time, with the exception that they're pushing back on the scenario of reducing it to 5 days. It's the same situation, the same dynamic. You're going to a red list country. It doesn't make any sense because, from my understanding of it, these games are being played in front of no fans. So travelling to a red list country creates no commercial benefit and no advantage to the situation. And neutrality should be the situation that overcomes all of this by playing in neutral environments. So the red list argument doesn't come to pass. I'm understanding that the Premier League clubs have now sort of girded their loins and said we're not releasing our players.
But most of them went anyway.
Well, no, not necessarily.
Half of them
some of them didn't go, and some of them went without any permission. And we've yet to find out what Tottenham have done about that particular situation, or whoever it was that the players went and broke every rule from players letting them go. And of course, then you had the argument, which is actually certain federations have said to Aston Villa, we're going to play them in 2 games, and started to pay them and advocate they're going to play them in 3. My understanding is that the Premier League clubs are going to push back, saying we're not going to do it, or the trade-off is we get this 5-day window and you don't play them in the 3rd game. So we get a situation where we don't get any impaction.
Why should they have special exemptions?
They shouldn't.
So in which case, they shouldn't have their quarantine reduced to 5 days?
No, they shouldn't. They should have to. If you're going to use, on one hand, we've got all over the back pages of the newspapers yesterday, COVID crisis, players won't take their vaccinations and so on and so forth. If you want to use them as a role model for one message, you've got to use them as a role model for another. You can't give them exemptions. You can't say everybody else can't have exemptions and can't travel to red list countries, but footballers can. I understand they're going to be bubbled. They're going to be flying in private jets and they're going to be all of this. But that's not the optic that people look at them through. The optic they look at them through is if you want to use a footballer, and I don't think you should, as a role model to impart a message, then you've got to make it across all of the different examples of how players are being utilised to impart this message.
So what's the situation? What's the solution?
Well, I agree with what Simon just said. Spot on, by the way, Simon. The solution is quite simple for the Premier League clubs. Don't let them go. That's your solution as a Premier League club.
What do you do about World Cup qualifying?
You protect your own. As a player, I think that's where it becomes difficult when you're passionate about playing for your country and you want to play in a World Cup and you want to cement your place in that squad.
So if you're Emi Martinez, for example, you've just become a frontline goalkeeper for your club in the last year. You've then got called up to the Argentina squad and you found yourself as the number 1. And someone is telling you that you can't go and protect your position, which could ultimately see you be the goalkeeper for Argentina at a World Cup. Are you really going to turn down a call-up because your club says you can't go?
No, and that's where the problems are going to lie. So Villa have to be diplomatic with him like they were last time, I suppose, and take it on the chin.
So isn't the better solution, actually, that because we're in this situation that we are in, is that FIFA, UEFA, the Premier League, everybody comes up, all the top leagues in the world, come up with a calendar that actually is fit for purpose? Because at the moment, the calendar is an absolute mess.
But it's even simpler than that, isn't it? The calendar doesn't work because we've got a compression of fixtures and we've got all the challenges that we've had, right? The reality is playing a neutral country.
Yeah.
Just playing for crying out loud, playing a neutral environment.
Why don't you just clear November? Why don't you just clear November and say international football, all of the qualifiers could have been played in that November in, I don't know, Dubai, Qatar, wherever you want to do it.
Something. No one ever wants to compromise.
But everyone should have just compromised.
America could have been compromised in the summer, but it wasn't compromised because
that's
they didn't want to play. Everybody
and
wants to do.
And that's why they've got a backlog of fixtures, by the way.
Exactly.
Because they wanted a sandwich in this Copa America that they didn't really need.
Didn't need.
They have got sort of excess dates, I think, at the back end of the summer. But by then, we should already have our components of the World Cup team.
The irony around Simon talking about compromise, just can't quite get that.
It's solution providing because it's not compromise in terms of giving up something you want. It's basically providing a solution so you don't lose something you should have. Right? That's different from compromising to get a different outcome. If you want your players back, and you know you're in a situation where contractually you have to release them.
Yeah, you do.
You have to contractually release these players. So then you're double dog daring the federation to sanction you, and they've already backed down once. Right? And you've now got a situation where you knew there was a month. Everybody knew this was going to be a pinch effect again. They damn well should have found a solution. If they haven't found a solution and you're pitching club against player against country, it's a disgrace.
Would it be better if the Premier League had come up with an arrangement with the government where they were allowed to release players or were happy to release players?
It's not government jurisdiction.
All right, okay. Well, they should did a deal with the government to release the players in order to get less quarantine for double vax players.
Well, yes, then you move into territory of a two-tiered system and you start to find out who's not being vaxxed and who has been vaxxed.
What's wrong with that?
Well, because people's medical records are nobody else's business but their own. right, and you start to moving people into territory, we start to disclose who's not being picked for their country because they haven't been double vaxxed. And I know that there's an argument that says they should be, and I know there's an argument that says that perhaps people have the right to make their own choices. You get into very dangerous territory, and I don't like the idea, because everyone in the media goes, and if this happens, then that'll happen, and then that'll happen. I understand that necessarily it doesn't always happen that way. But the balance is that the government shouldn't have to intercede for grown-up football people to go, we can't play bloody games in red list countries.
But if I said to you, you've got to get a double jab to go and play for England in Andorra and Hungary in the next international break. If you don't get double vaxxed, we ain't going to be able to pick you because it's logistically going to be too much of an issue for us and we're going to end up having a fallout with a club. If I had that conversation with you, would you do it?
Yeah, 100%.
Would most players, do you think?
Yeah, I think so.
Because there has been hesitancy.
But the argument is that there's something fundamentally immoral about your stance in the first place. Because if you're prepared to have a double jab to suit a personal agenda, then why weren't you prepared to have a double jab to suit your own colleagues at home?
Yeah, well, that's a fair
So you're
point.
in a very difficult territory because ultimately what you're doing is you're mandating a player to do something by taking something away from him.
You're not mandating. You're saying, look,
No,
actually, to be honest with you,
you're taking something away from him.
we can't do it logistically unless you do it. So it's up to you. We want to pick you, but actually...
But that is a form of mandate. That's taking something
it's just
away from somebody.
Isn't it being pragmatic and giving you the reality of the situation?
Well, depends what you see that situation to be.
Well,
but life is full of those compromises.
Yes,
Simon.
of course. But if you take away the argument,
if you didn't have a passport, you'd get one if you wanted to play international football.
We're really talking about red list countries. We're talking about the challenge becomes about quarantining back from red list countries. If you're going to play a game in Spain, you can come back, get a 2-day test and release, and Bob's your uncle, right? So why do you need to play in red list countries?
Well, because the authorities are putting you in that position where you don't have any other choice.
But the authorities, then the law is an ass because it's creating the conundrum, it's creating the argument, it's creating the problem. And I would understand, and I think I'm right, Sam, and you've got a greater depth of knowledge on things like this than me, that they're not able to play in front of spectators in red list countries.
It depends which red list country you're in. I mean, in Brazil, they didn't play in front of spectators the last time.
Right,
no.
so there's no home advantage by playing at home.
No.
So with the greatest respect in the world,
Why
are you playing there? You're going to get the broadcasters to pay the money anyway because they're going to broadcast the game from wherever. Why don't you find a neutral country that's going to have no issue with you playing? They're paying for doing it.
Time difference, maybe?
What about Brazilian TV
We're still pulling them across the
audiences?
world, wherever we're pulling
I'm on
them
about
from.
for the networks who are showing the games in those particular
Well,
countries.
something has to be a horse trade somewhere.
Yeah.
And if the games are that important for people to watch, and if you dropped them into North America, they're not red list countries, are they? Canada's not a red list country. Drop it into Canada if they're prepared to take it. Why not? Because people don't want to find solutions. What they want to be intransigent and say, this is how we're going to operate, and we've got the right to do it. And then what they have is a situation where everybody goes, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense.
So if you've all got to make a compromise, the easiest solution is we can drop the quarantine down to 5 days if you get double jabbed.
No, but what you're asking for is dispensation and special exception for professional athletes. Along the same argument that I've just run, which is on one hand we're advocating them to be role models on one set of things, on another thing we're saying that because they're sports stars they get a pass on that.
Jim White and Simon Jordan, Monday to Thursday morning 10 till 1 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.